Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another video. We have a special guest here today, Professor Janice Tsay. She works for Centrifuge. She's the partner and portfolio lead at Centrifuge, a leading blockchain DeFi company. So we're honored to have her as a guest speaker. Professor Janice Tsay, would you like to give a little bit of background on yourself and also the company Centrifuge?
Of course. Thanks for having me, Julia Alexandra. So my name is Janice. As Julia Alexandra introduced me, I have been working in crypto for, I think a little bit, like almost a year and a half. My background is in traditional finance. So I started my career working in Citigroup as a product manager first. And then I did FX sales and trading at different companies, ABN AMRO, Santander. I did fixed income syndication as well. I have an MBA from Chicago Booth. I spent a bit of time at consulting at McKinsey and Company. And here I am at Centrifuge. So what Centrifuge does is it's an on-chain securitization platform. So we really look at the world's credit markets, right? So sort of more on the debt side. And what Centrifuge does right now, that's current UI, it's called Tinlick, that runs on the Ethereum network. It basically has a two tranche model, right? A senior and a junior tranche where you lend and borrow money. The junior tranche gives you more interest rates, but it gives you higher interest rate, but also takes first loss. And we are moving to our own parachain called Centrifuge Chain that lives on the Polkadot ecosystem. That's very exciting. And the work that I do there, I basically work with the asset originators. So people who want to borrow money on chain. I also work with some of the institutional investors who are on the other side of the table. And I also work with some of the leading DeFi protocols like MakerDAO, who are one of our I guess I would call them institutional DeFi protocol lenders. So they lend out their stablecoin DAI to us.
Wow. Well, that is a very extensive resume, and it seems like Centrifuge has has a lot of works in process. Well, everything that you just said sounds amazing. But let's actually get into understanding what Centrifuge is doing within sort of the crypto space. Let's understand what exactly is a cryptocurrency, and I think Professor Janice Tsay can elaborate a little bit more on what that is.
Yeah, sure. For the purposes of this presentation, I have gone quite to the basics. I know that some of you have varying degrees of knowledge and interest in the crypto space. So I'm really looking forward to the Q&A where we can really get into the meat of this. But let's sort of like lay the ground, right? At its most core and basic, a blockchain is a list of transactions that anyone can view and verify. So there is a Bitcoin blockchain, and then on Ethereum as well, the same. And you'll see all these transactions if you go on, etherscan.io is probably the most common, right? Where you can put in your own wallet address, somebody else's wallet address, and look at the transactions that have been done, look at the assets that are being currently held in their wallets, right? And you can do the same whether or not it's a hardware or software wallet. Most cryptocurrencies are secured via blockchain networks, but I want to almost separate out crypto and blockchain, right? Blockchain technology for me is much more of the umbrella, right? It has many, many users outside of cryptocurrency, right? If you think of a simple, let's say, supply chain example, right? You could use the blockchain to recognize when something has been manufactured, right? What parts it has, all the way down to its end consumer. Let's say a elevator, right? You can use that same knowledge and data to figure out what parts you need when the elevator is broken down and needs repairs, which teams have the most, which team or which person on your team has the most technical knowledge to be able to deal with the repairs and be able to source like parts for the repairs. Some advantages for the blockchain is that it's global, right? You can send cryptocurrency to anybody in the world as long as they have a wallet address. Increases in privacy, which is good and bad. You simply need somebody else's wallet address. You don't need any other identifiers about them, right? So that helps to keep your privacy. If you compare this to a traditional ACH or wire transfer from a bank, it firstly takes longer. You need to pay fees. Well, you need to pay gas fees on the blockchain as well. And you need a lot of identifying features about yourself. You need to know your name, your bank account number, a lot of data that you would rather not give to somebody else. And the third thing is that it is really, really open. So it is what you call decentralized. Nobody owns it, right? For the most part of it, nobody owns it. There is no government or single bank that owns it. It is is decentralized, owned by everybody. And no one can be blocked from using it. So I think to me, those are some of the beauties and also obviously pitfalls of a blockchain.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So let's get now into sort of, I guess, crypto as a whole, as sort of an industry.
Yeah, of course. So I want to maybe go into a little bit of like concepts, right, between proof of work versus proof of stake. So as I mentioned earlier, the blockchain is not maintained by one sort of entity, right? No one government, no one bank, let's say. These are really about consensus mechanisms, right? That cryptocurrencies can use to verify new transactions. Actually, say, okay, this set of transactions were legit. The funds or the cryptocurrencies move from this wallet to this wallet. Now that particular transaction is now going to be added to the blockchain, right? All of these steps are not taken and monitored by one single person, right? So how do you incentivize people to help build out your blockchain, help you validate that the transaction was real? There are two typical types of mechanisms. One is really proof of work. This is what Bitcoin uses, right? Where it's secured and really verified by what you call Bitcoin miners. What they do is they race to be the first to solve a math puzzle, right? So what your reward for solving this math puzzle is that you get a small amount of crypto, usually a predetermined formula that's set, much like Bitcoin. The problem with proof of work is that the energy consumption tends to be very, very high. And really, if this is consensus driven. So if there is a bad actor in this space, what happens is that they will be kicked off, right? Their transaction will be, let's say, negated, and they would have lost this sunk cost that they have put in for the computing power, energy, and time, right? So these two are really meant to encourage people to act for the good of the blockchain and not just for themselves. Proof of stake is something that's actually getting more and more common. Right, so Ethereum uses it. Centrifuge used to use it as well, right? Where you have a network of validators, right? Who can be trusted, who can be, let's say, they go through a whole approval process by a DAO, right? The decentralized autonomous organizations. And what they do is they stake. So they put in their own crypto in exchange for this opportunity to validate a new transaction and so on. So energy consumption is quite low. Basically, the bet is that if you have your own money in there, then you are incentivized to act for the good of the protocol. And what happens if it's found out that you did something that was not great for the protocol, or you did the blockchain is constantly checked by other miners or other people who are validators, is that your part of your stake funds will be slashed and usually burned. So you will no longer have access to them. So these two, I want to say, gives a good sort of sense of what Julie and Alexandra, you were talking about earlier, which is like, how do you maybe view the blockchain space overall? These are two really basic concepts to understand. Should I go through the rest of the slides first and then maybe we go into Q&A? Would that be easier?
Yep, that sounds great.
Sounds good. So I don't have many more slides. So I'm really looking forward to the questions that you guys had for me. One of the things that you might have heard of is blockchain's impossible triangle or trilemma, right? The three trade-offs are this. One is that blockchains are decentralized, right? So you create a blockchain that is not reliant on one central point of control, right? So this has many benefits in that, you don't have a single point of failure, which is what a lot of financial institutions cannot say about themselves. Number two is that it's scalable, right? As all blockchains grow, you want to be able to handle an increasingly growing amount of transactions. And the third one, really the security of it. To be able to operate as expected, defend itself from bugs and attacks and other unforeseen issues. The trilemma's theory is that, let's say, for example, right, as you scale, you are really looking for upside. You're looking for how to grow the number of partners that you want to work with, how to grow with, how to get more people to come and use your chain. But the issue is that the opposite of it will be security. The more people you invite to use your chain, right, the higher chance there is that people will start looking at your protocol as a target. They see that you have a treasury of 120 million and they want all of it. The other pieces also with, let's say, decentralization, right? If you had a centralized point of control or someone to be able to say, hey, we're seeing a lot of attacks and hacks coming from this area, we need to put more resources towards that now. Typically, centralized controls maybe will be able to move faster, right? But all that to say is that while you see this triangle, not everybody agrees that there's a trilemma. What I've seen some people say is that really all protocols basically decide which one or two are the most important to them. And then they solve for the third one, not as an afterthought, but as a later. So I think for me as well, it really is a matter of how you want to grow your protocol and what matters the most to you. I'm almost done. The last page is I like to share like some basic resources. Coinbase and Binance, and actually a lot of the top centralized exchanges have a learning area where you don't have to log in. You don't have to create an account. And it's really a learning area where you can learn the most basics of like what is Bitcoin, what is Ethereum, all the way through the more complex concepts around liquidity mining and so on. And along the way, they'll do little tests and quizzes that you could take, and it's quite fun. I realize that a lot of people don't know about these, so I like to share these. Although the names Coinbase and Binance is incredibly, everybody knows about them. And I always encourage people who are just starting out to read about centralized exchanges versus decentralized exchanges. I think that starts to give you a really good idea of what decentralization is. I think that so many of us we understand what Fidelity does, and we understand what Charles Schwab does. And all of these are really good examples of centralized, but there really isn't many good decentralized examples that we currently see in the real world. So looking at decentralized exchanges and how they work and how people are incentivized is really cool. I would love for you guys to also understand the difference between governance tokens and maybe security tokens, liquidity mining, some basics about gas fees. And with that, maybe let me bring us back to the first slide, which is the most basic, and then Julia Alexandra, do you want to start with some of the questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, these were obviously great slides, giving a lot of perspective into the crypto space. So we had a question here from one of our members, and she asked, is it possible to ask her about her expectations of some of the topics involving cryptocurrencies, NFTs, and the metaverse, how they can all coincide with each other and how they can evolve together?
So I guess one thing that I didn't say earlier when I did my self-intro is that I also advise and invest in some projects. So across gaming and I'm also looking at a Solana decentralized exchange. I think the idea of NFTs and the metaverse, it's really hyped right now. There are very, very high valuations for both projects as well as NFTs. If you go on to OpenSea, right, which is I think the largest NFT marketplace, you will see that things trade for a very high premium, especially the ones that are like the top, let's say 10 to 25 projects. What is, to me, there are a couple of things to think about. One is, I'm not sure if anybody really understands what the metaverse is, and the term is used quite easily, maybe frivolously. So I encourage, like, if you were interested in like buying an NFT, just like basics, right? Really do the research on the team. NFT buying is, and a lot of crypto projects are based very much on how strong and active their community is and how much sort of they do for the community. So that's one of the metrics I'll look at. I'll also look at whether let's say the game itself, if you're talking about a game, right, has merit beyond the initial. A lot of crypto projects, they throw like they give a whitelist. That's the first way they sort of like get people coming in. The whitelist is basically a short list of people who can mint their NFTs at the first round. And then they incentivize people to keep staying on by throwing, free like tokens at them or free NFTs at them. But for me, teaching at Columbia's high school summer intensive for the past few years, one of the things I really think about is also, if you strip off all of that extra, is that game really something that you want to play? That is a great game that keeps you engaged. The difference between Web 2 and Web 3 games, as I've seen so far, is that Web 2 games, people want to play them regardless. They want to play them because they love the game, they love the characters, they love the graphics. They're very willing to spend whatever 3 or 4 hours of the day playing it. With crypto, the audience is very different. It's much more opportunistic. You come in, you buy a few NFTs, right? You buy a few like weapons, whatever it is that you need. And then you make back the money in like 2 weeks of playing, right? And you churn games, right? You make money, you get out in like a few months. So all to say, thinking about it is that I would like to, I want people assessing the games and NFTs look at the longevity. Now, one thing that has been really interesting, I'm not sure if you guys have read this, is that the Bored Apes York Club, right? I think it's the most expensive NFTs now. They've just signed a trilogy of movies to be produced by Coinbase. And I think that people think of Web 2 going to Web 3, but I don't think about Web 3 coming to Web 2. So a Bored Ape is going to be on your screen. If you have a Bored Ape, you can petition for it to be like one of the stars of it. And to me, this is not the end of it, right? It's going to be much more than a profile pic on your Twitter account. As it is a lot of these, high-end, I guess, NFTs have parties in New York, in Miami, and so on, where your ticket is your NFT. So it'll be interesting to see how the two worlds collide. I'm sorry that is a bit of a long answer, but the question that you gave me was also pretty broad.
Yeah. So basically, in your opinion, sort of the Web3 technology that's being developed right now is obviously going to take a very extended and long time. But from your perspective, Web3 technology and crypto technology may be more integral with Web2 technology, not necessarily a full takeover of the sort of technological perspective we have now?
I think there is a lot to learn from one another. I would say that Web2 and Web3 businesses are fundamentally quite different, right? The audiences are quite different. In Web3, you have so much more of your focus is on your community. And because you have a trading token, most of the projects will have a trading token. You almost get this pressure that public companies get right away, which is, you get all these like when moon, why this, like questions. So there's this sort of additional pressure that their projects like sort of take on because they want the adoption. Therefore, they have the trading token. But then it's this cycle, right? Then people are going to be focused on your token price and much less about the product that they are building, which is a problem that Web2 companies have gotten really good at, right? They care so much about product market fit, which I think that, Web3 companies need to be so much more aware of, instead of saying, well, someone can draw a few NFTs, I can do it too, right? It's not just that. There is, I think a lot of Web3 folks have the build and they will come, much like Google Glasses, right? Build it and they will come mentality. Well, in actual fact, the product market fit is also incredibly important. How do you keep your audiences with you even when you strip away all the like fancy tokenomics that you had at the beginning? That's something that I think there is this really interesting place to learn about it. And Centrifuge is one of those companies I think that has like done that quite well, like learning from Web2 and bringing the learnings to Web3. The other one that I was looking at, another project called Helium, where they incentivize people to have like physical things with them, right? Almost like a tracker with them. And there is also a crypto play. I think we'll hopefully see a lot more products that come out where there is like a Web 2.5 interplay.
Yeah, definitely. This is all developing so quickly, and I definitely agree. There is a lot of hype within this sort of industry. I'm not sure if it's totally reasonable. Leading into the next question that someone asked, he asked, "Can you ask her about her opinion on the NFT industry being sort of a bubble and how that could affect the Ethereum network?"
That's a really great question. And if I had the answer to this question, I would be a billionaire, right? I think that a lot of the top NFT projects now have enough heft and enough investors, right? That there is probably a like floor price to it. And then when I mean floor price, I don't mean what you see on OpenSea, right? What the floor price, the floor price that you see on OpenSea simply is what someone is willing to sell the NFT for, right? At that sort of like cheapest rate. What I really mean is like, if you look at what the team is doing, right? The Bored Apes team is doing, right? They are creating a world where, the Bored Apes are coming to your screen in a movie, right? And presumably that they would also start working with, I cannot imagine that Bored Apes will be the only one to do this, right? The other companies, like the other top NFT projects, do those cool cats, Clonexus, right? We'll do things like this. So I think that is something that's quite fundamental, right? And will be quite interesting to see. These smaller NFT projects, there are a lot of small NFT projects, and when you join their Discord channels, if you hold the NFT of something else, maybe you get the whitelist of another. right? I think those are really the ones that you need to look and make sure that you're happy what the team is doing. You actually like the art, right? And you could find yourself wanting to spend like a good amount of money on the project. What a lot of people do if they simply don't know is that they just get into a whitelist and they spend maybe not a lot. Like there are some projects where you could get something for 0.05 to 8 ETH just as a beginning. So right now, what's that, like $100, right, to start on an NFT, and then you sort of hope and pray. It's basically a gamble at that point, right? But then again, if you lose $100, maybe it's not depending on your resources, maybe it's not something you lose sleep over. And then, sorry, let me cough and then I'll come back with one more point. The last thing for me is really about the NFTs that you see in games. And that's really, really specific about the game, right? So if you play XC, Sandbox, all of that, the way a lot of the projects have been built in the past is that it's very bootstrapped, right? They tend to they optimize for speed versus quality. And then now that they are maturing projects, they are having, when they have to develop stuff, it takes longer because they didn't start with that sort of like full foundation. They probably didn't know where it was going, right? If you think about XC when they first started, they probably are like, well, we're going to build something cool that we like, and we're going to get some community members, right? So I want to say for me, for that one, if it's really about how many people are going to play. And to me, that is also about technology, because now you see a lot more games that are coming out, crypto games. A lot of it that's not really good, but some projects that I've been talking to have been really stepping back and thinking about how do I avoid the same mistakes that Axie made? How do I build fundamentals so that as businesses shift, I won't get taken over by a quick competitor that now has a better tech stack than I spent time making like 3 years ago. So I think those are the key questions I will ask yourself before you invest in an NFT. I teach valuation at Columbia's High School Summer Intensive, and this is impossible to value. Impossible.
Yeah, well, I think everyone kind of agrees that it's very hard, near impossible to value sort of appreciation or depreciation of an NFT asset. But another person asked me, which I think is super interesting, which also is very integral with sort of the way you invest in the NFT space. He asked, do you think there is a sort of crypto psychology when investing in NFTs, like when people value NFTs not by the dollar amount, but by the number of Ethereum they have in their wallet?
So are you saying that people rather hold NFTs than Ethereum? Is that?
I think what he was asking is sort of, do you think that there is a sort of crypto psychology? Like, do you think people when they look at an NFT, when they say Bored Ape Yacht Club NFT, do they think I can afford that by the dollar amount or by the number of Ethereum? So I can afford that because that's 3 Ethereum, I have 60, right? Or do they think more in like 3 Ethereum, that's thousands of dollars?
That's actually a very interesting view, right? Because we're so used to thinking about the value of items in dollar amounts, right? And now there are stable coins, obviously, that is roughly pegged to the US dollar, so the same idea. But Ethereum in itself isn't a stable value, at least not in the real world. But I do see it because the psychology of the people who own, like, I guess, high-end NFTs it's a little bit different, right? They own it because they want to show off. They want to belong to a club. Maybe they own it because they think that they can get a quick profit. I think I read somewhere that the average number of NFTs is held by, it's the same story as, Bitcoin and so on, held by like a very small percentage of people. And the vast majority of NFTs beyond the top 15, 25 projects, they don't actually trade that much. So there's not much value there. So let's say you narrow your argument or discussion points to the top few projects. And it's interesting because on OpenSea, like a CloneX or like any of the top projects, it is sold in Ethereum, right? You don't say that it is like 80,000. You say, okay, like whatever, like 20 ETH, right? Never really thought about it like that. But yeah, I guess, if you start holding so much ETH that it becomes your measure of value versus obviously you still have to eat and live your daily lives. But I could see it. I could see how someone would start thinking about it as, okay, so I have whatever 60 ETH and like in your example, right? I'm going to spend whatever 3 ETH on this. It's quite interesting. And then the other psychological part is that this thing that I actually have quite surprised I haven't said it yet, which is FOMO, right? And so that's the other piece that, I've had friends of mine who own doodles and say like, I would never sell my 2 doodles. And all of these people are, have great jobs and understand valuation and, so it's really interesting for me to see how that has played out, and I'm not sure how it will play out going forward. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, and I think as more people especially within the younger age group get integrated with sort of the cryptocurrency space, they start investing. I think it really does sort of affect their viewpoint of how they I guess make money in this area. And for our final question coming from me actually is I was wondering from your experience, from your opinion, do you think that since cryptocurrency has already been sort of developed, it's still developing, but it's been developed quite nicely over a set of long years. Do you think now we're starting to see a little bit of fundamental reasoning in the crypto space of valuation, not in the sort of traditional fundamental, like looking at intrinsic value or your cash flow of a company, but more so the underlying technology of a cryptocurrency to value their sort of potential to becoming a real accepted, adopted currency?
Give me one sec, sorry. This cough is going to be the death of me. By the way, I know this was the last question, so I wanted to move the slide to the last slide in case anyone wants to do more research by themselves. That's an interesting question, because if I look at traditional valuation, right? And if you think about tech companies, right? Google, Meta, and so on, you don't value their technology in that sense, right? Unless they were sort of going to like sell it. You value the technology. It's very much still based on sort of the revenue model, right? Like, and so I don't know if there is a way for me to say, hey, Solana, I think your network is worth this much, unless I was going to sell it, right? Just the network itself. But the network itself is not worth very much without all of the people that are in there, right, transacting on it, building dApps of it, building like different things that they could do that have all these use cases on them. So I wouldn't. I think it is going to be used as a, here's what the technology can do. Here is what, like, here is like the revenue that you can drive from it, right? The users that you can drive from it. I still think that that's going to be the case. Maybe in the like mid to short term, but right now I definitely see this difference in the valuations between crypto and non-crypto projects. So much so that I've seen traditional companies that have like potentially could have a strong crypto play coming to crypto and raising funds with crypto VCs because the valuations that they get are so much higher. And that's due to a few different things, right? Like crypto's valuations are still pretty hyped. The crypto VCs have raised so much money and they have to put it somewhere, right? But as per anything, I think that difference would narrow, and then you start seeing the, like what I've said earlier, which is like the sort of getting back to fundamentals. I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, definitely. That's understandable. I think we all have to take a step back and take a look at sort of cryptos, NFTs, and even the metaverse in a more reasonable, realistic sense. I think that there's a lot of money and a lot of investor hype getting into all these industries. Hopefully, they will eventually all meet our expectations of how we imagine this sort of space to be. But for now, I think we need to take a little bit step back and be conservative on how we invest our money with this stuff. But thank you, Professor Janice. We really appreciate your time and your insights. And we can't wait to see what Centrifuge is up to next.
Yeah, of course. I'm really excited. And if you guys would like, I'll share more with you. Don't get me wrong, the space is incredibly fun and very, very exciting, but there is a huge pinch of salt that comes with this industry. I just want to make sure that you guys are looking out for yourselves. There's obviously a ton of scammers that are out there. There are a lot of people doing good work, and I think you find those people. And yeah, I hope that you guys have a great conference and have a great competition. And good luck. And I'm on the Discord channel if you guys want to reach out to me directly for any questions. I'm looking forward to working more with SkyTube and being involved with whatever you guys are doing. Super exciting stuff.
All right, awesome. We really appreciate your time. I guess that's the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much.